welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you. So today's video is something that I have thought about whether I should make it or not, whether should I even talk about this topic or not. But again, it's one of those ideas that came spontaneously to me, like maybe I should talk about this topic, because I, first of all, have to let you know that the people who have come to me for personal consultations, like 9 times out of 10, they are either in the Rahu Mahadasha or they are about to start the Rahu Mahadasha. And that is not a coincidence, since Rahu and Ketu rule astrology. So many people, once they enter the Rahu Mahadasha, like even myself, suddenly start to become interested in astrology. Of course, the difference with me was that I was interested in astrology since I was a child, except that I only really started to get into astrology once I reached my Rahu Mahadasha, which I don't think was a coincidence. But in order for you to understand the Rahu energy, I want to give the general legend of this point. I have kind of vaguely referenced the legend behind Rahu in several videos, and I have collected some information about it just so you can get the major themes connected to the Rahu energy. Okay, now I will please apologize from the beginning, especially if you are very familiar with the Hindu mythology. Now, I'm not some kind of a scholar or anything. I've just taken out some excerpts out of the basic legend just to illustrate the main themes connected to Rahu. Okay, so according to the Hindu mythology, some long time ago, according to the legend, there was some war between the Devas, or the gods, and the Asuras, which were demons. Okay, and the demons won the war. Now, shortly after this, there was an agreement made between these demons and gods that they would equally feast on something called an Amrit, the Amrit, which was a kind of a nectar of immortality that was normally designed for the gods. But since the Asuras had won the war, the gods agreed on the surface to share it. However, Lord Vishnu decided to play a trick on the Asuras. Okay, and so right around the time when the pot of Amrit was taken out and placed in front of the Asuras and the Devas, there was a rush, from both the Asuras and the Devas to eat it. And seeing this, Lord Vishnu took the form of Mohini, who was a beautiful dancer, and offered her services in distributing the Amrit equally to both the Devas and the Asuras. She made both of them sit in 2 rows, but actually only gave the Amrit to the Devas. Now, this was a shortened version, so I'm not sure what she gave to the Asuras, but that's not really the point. So he was tricking the Asuras, or the demons, by only giving this nectar of immortality to the Devas, or the gods. Towards the end, however, one of the Asuras realized what she was doing, and he went and sat in the same line with the Devas and drank the Amrit. The moment that Chandra, which is the moon, and Surya, which is the sun, saw that he was an Asura and sitting in the line with the Devas, they immediately informed Mohini. Mohini then took back the shape of Lord Vishnu and hit this Asura with her weapon, which was supposed to be some kind of a wheel, decapitating him. The head of the Asura became Rahu, and the tail became Ketu. But because he had already drank from this nectar of immortality called the Amrit, he was immortal. And also, this is according to legend why Rahu and Ketu eclipse the sun and the moon. Okay, so this is the cute little legend associated with Rahu and Ketu. Now, the reason I wanted to describe it is because there are some key themes here. First of all, this demon this Asura that Rahu comes from, of which, Rahu is basically the head of this demon, right? This demon was basically deceived, right? Because rightfully they had won the war, and they were promised that they were going to share this nectar. However, Lord Vishnu planned on deceiving the Asuras by only giving this nectar to the gods. And then the demon realized the trick, and in order to restore what he saw as rightfully his, he also used deception by placing himself in the same line as the Devas to receive this nectar. And he was punished for it. And the theme here is like, first of all, there's a theme of deception. So there is the double deception of, being promised something and then not being given what was promised. And then there is the deception used to correct an injustice. That's one theme that you want to remember, and it's connected to Rahu, okay? The another one is there's this theme of hunger. Because now the head is separated from the body. So the head is immortal and cannot feel the stomach. So the head is always hungry. That's the theory. So this is Rahu. This is why Rahu is an area where you are always hungry. You always want more. Okay? And it's also about material desire and about power and ambition. Because Rahu rules the Maya. It rules the illusion of the material world. Also, another theme that you won't really get from this legend, but according to other things that I have read, Rahu is basically almost kind of like Satan in the Christian tradition, because Satan's role, according to Christianity, is to tempt human beings, to keep them away from the righteous path and to lead them into sin, quote unquote. And the energy of Rahu is actually not far off. It's also the same thing. It's kind of like Rahu's job is to keep you in the Maya. Rahu wants the material world. They want the Rahu, will push you to hunger for ambition, for material status, for money, for all of these things that I guess spiritual people call superficial, things to do with a title, status, all the things that I've mentioned before, and money, of course. And there's a theme of being so desperate that you might actually be inclined to use deception to get what you want, okay? However, if you actually, now, for the longest time, I knew since pretty early on when I started learning Vedic astrology that, okay, there is a theme of deception connected to Rahu. But I kind of misunderstood this energy. And the reason I wanted to make this video now is because yours truly over here, I've been in my Rahu Mahadasha for over a decade right now. And let me tell you, it has been simultaneously the best and the worst part of my life. I mean, to be fair, I was also quite young when it started. I was in my late teens, so I hadn't had that much life experience before. But up until the Rahu Mahadasha, it was, let's say, relatively stable, let's say. After the Rahu Mahadasha, it was constant ups and downs, constant upheavals. constant stress, psychologically, emotionally, physically, however you want to call it. Now, obviously, I don't want to scare people, but I want to warn people, especially since I'm willing to bet that most people who watch the astrological channels are already in the Rahu Mahadasha because of the things that I mentioned before. So it tends to bring this interest into astrology to the forefront. So even people who would not normally be interested in astrology might actually become interested in astrology during the Rahu Mahadasha. And this is because Rahu wants quick results, and this is the key thing. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and play the righteous whatever, because I'm not. Actually, when I first started in the Rahu Mahadasha, and when I first started into astrology, I was no different. You know, most of us who get into astrology, we look for answers. We look for, you know, first of all, to understand ourselves and to understand things that have happened in our lives, and you know, all kinds of things that we cannot answer through conventional means of knowledge. So that's how we get into astrology, and it's probably also why so many people are called to astrology during the Rahu Mahadasha, because usually on the onset of the Mahadasha something happens, you know, something, especially since the first 2 to 3 years of the Rahu Mahadasha are also under the Rahu Antardasha. There's usually something that happens there, some kind of a trigger moment, something that, you know, maybe even turns your life upside down, depending on how strong Rahu is in your chart. But something happens, some kind of an upheaval, some kind of a crisis moment, some kind of a, I don't know, something that makes you question things, you know, that makes you kind of rethink maybe even your sense of identity, or again, it depends on what houses Rahu influences. And I will, you know, I'm not going to get too much into detail about my own chart because I don't like the idea, but let me just say that in my chart, Rahu is conjunct several planets, okay? And when I was going through these first years of the Rahu Mahadasha, something horrible happened to me. I'm not going to say what, but it was something that completely changed my sense of identity, actually wiped out my sense of identity, you know. And it's usually with Rahu, there is deception, there is upheaval, and in my case, Rahu influences the houses that clearly explain this thing that happened in my life, okay? And in my chart, Rahu aspects the air houses, so the houses that have to do with relationships, okay? And this was the area that was by far the most impacted throughout the past decade, more than that. And when I say relationships, I'm not just talking about romantic relationships, I'm talking about all relationships with people in general, okay? And it was exactly like that. And after that, my sense of identity was wiped out. I had to start from scratch, basically, to rebuild myself and to figure out who I was all over again. It was an incredibly painful thing to go through, and it was really bad. But at the same time, it kind of helped me to get outside of a rut, because before this, I actually thought about this relatively recently. When I started, it started, so I was in my late teens when it started, and before it started, of course, I was an extremely insecure teenager. I had the lowest of the lowest self-esteem. Before this, I was going through the Mars Mahadasha, which was very challenging as well, I think. I think it was a Mars Mahadasha, yeah, pretty sure. But it was a rough time, you know, it was a pretty rough time, and even though on a surface, materially, I was doing okay, in the sense there was nothing extraordinary happening on the surface, I had a really bad upbringing. I had, you know, relatively abusive environment growing up, and then I also had to deal with bullying at school and all this stuff, so it was a really rough time. And to be fair, the Rahu Mahadasha didn't improve things, not when it comes to relationships. However, what it did improve was the incentive. It gave me the incentive to start over. And it kind of pushed me. It's kind of like that saying, a kick in the butt is like a step forward. I don't know, I heard this saying before, at least in my language. And I heard this saying before, so it was basically like that. Basically, after the first 2-3 years of the Rahu Mahadasha, I had hit rock bottom. Like, emotionally, I went through the worst depression, and I was depressed even before, but what happened in the first 2 to 3 years of the Rahu Mahadasha, Rahu Antardasha, was I went even deeper into depression, and sooner then I started having manic phases, and I started learning things about psychology, and I kept searching things and searching answers about why I felt the way that I did, and these things prompted the beginning of the end of my depression, which had, at that time, I was depressed for over 5 years, like, and I'm talking really bad depression. I'm not talking about like mild melancholy or like, I was occasionally dreamy and sad. No, I mean, like, I was in emotional pain 24 out of 24 hours. And when I went through this Mahadasha, it sparked the revolutionary change of my sense of identity. I started taking on challenges that I hadn't taken before, and I slowly pulled myself out of it. I started taking control of my life. And things didn't get better. My attitude changed. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, I went from someone who was so hurt and disappointed and, I felt completely unsupported by everyone in my life to no longer caring. It was like, and throughout the Rahu Mahadasha, I still went through countless instances of dealing with people who were just crappy, who were shitty, who were deceptive, people who try to take advantage of me, people who would project things on me, who were definitely not supportive, people who were self-seeking and pretended to care about me only to, achieve some personal gain. But my attitude changed in the sense that I learned how to play the game, if you know what I mean. Like, if you've seen Game of Thrones, like, remember that scene where Littlefinger tells Sansa, like, the best way to confuse your enemies is to do things that seem to be against you sometimes, to work against you sometimes, because if they don't know what you're about to do next, they will not anticipate your moves, and you will win. And remember that when you come to play the game. I'm pretty sure I butchered the quote, but it was more or less the general idea. In the sense that, and it's funny because I thought about this relatively recently, that in some ways I did become deceptive, but not in a horrible way. Like, but similarly to the legend of Rahu, I was deceptive when I felt unfairly treated. Let me give you an example. Like, if I signed a contract, let's say I went to a job interview, I signed a contract, I was promised certain things, but they failed to deliver. I started acting out. I started being manipulative. I started using my intelligence in a way that was probably detrimental to the job in question. Am I proud about these things? To be honest, neither proud or embarrassed or anything. I thought I did what I thought was right at that time. I'm not talking about horrible things or illegal things, but I'm talking manipulations. I'm talking, for instance, having a boss who was disrespectful or chauvinistic, and I did everything in my power to make his life miserable. Like, double-crossing, employers, in terms of, employers who treated me like shit and thought they could just get rid of me. I made sure that they suffered as much as possible before they got rid of me. Things like that, and again, things that, for instance, before the Rahu Mahadasha, I would have never done these things, Like, I would have been, like, super meek, and not necessarily meek, but I would have been, I think in some ways more naive. Like, I would have been this, person who, like, no, I'm gonna believe in justice, and I'm gonna and I'm gonna be fair, and no matter what others do to me, I'm gonna be fair towards others. But when I went through the Rahu Mahadasha and I started noticing so many things, and I felt discriminated in so many ways, either based on my gender or based on, I don't know, my appearance or lack of connections or whatever, and I realized how the world works, I became more and more intelligent, I would say, in the sense that I learned how to use things to my advantage, or I learned how to conceal pieces of information when it would be comfortable for me to conceal these things, and etc., so on and so forth. And by and large, I am not a deceptive person at all. I am a very honest person, and and this is one of the things, again, that really came to my mind recently, because I only deceive if I feel that someone else is trying to deceive me, if that makes sense. If I feel like someone else is clearly disrespectful or not treating me fairly, or they think that they can double cross me, or they can be arrogant towards me, that's when I start to act out, or I start to act in a way that is less than, let's say, ideal. But normally I'm not the kind of person that would use deception as a way to just get by in life. But this is something that I really like. I remember really liking Game of Thrones and that thing about Sansa, because I was literally kind of like Sansa. I mean, obviously I didn't go through that horrible level of stuff that she went through in the show, but I was kind of like that. I was naive. I started out naive in life, and when I was double crossed by a lot of people, I got to the point where I became more ruthless, and more clever and more strategic. And even though the Rahu Mahadasha was, brought so many ups and downs, some of the things that it will bring that I have read that it is connected to, and it's something that would also help you to understand, is that it definitely brought in my life a lot more chances of traveling abroad. Now, I had traveled abroad even before, but not by myself. During the Rahu Mahadasha, I actually took a 2 to 3 months scholarship. Yeah, it was kind of a scholarship of studying abroad. And I went by myself, which was something that really further helped my developing of my independence and my self-reliance and taking on challenges and all this stuff. And it also brought so many opportunities in this materially. Like, I got my own place, which I never would have thought would be possible in a million years. It was not something planned, but things arranged themselves in such a way that this opportunity was presented to me, and I took it, and I thought about, like, I don't know, like, I don't know whether, I can't even make up my mind on whether it's good or bad. Like, it's one of those things in a period of my life that I can say has brought so much positive and so much negative, both of which I cannot imagine who I would be without. You know what I'm saying? Like, it has made me who I am. In all the ups and downs, and it's still not over, and like I said, I hope that I make it alive until the end of the Mahadasha. I'll keep you posted. And I wonder how this Mahadasha played out for other people. I don't know, but I would suggest that you look for where Rahu is sitting, of course, which signs, how strong it is, whether it's exalted or not. Obviously, if Rahu is exalted, I would expect it to bring even more material wealth, for instance. In my case, it's pretty strong, okay? And it did bring me more material things, it is true, but not without struggle, not without hustle. So it's not like I won the lottery or anything. There were some instances where I was able to maybe get a little bit, little tidbits of advantages, let's say, which I'm not even sure are due to the Rahu influence. Maybe there were other transits happening at the same time. But I still had to hustle. I had to work my butt off, for everything that I have and all that stuff. But it also brought definitely the ambition, I think, which before the Rahu Mahadasha, I really didn't feel that I was an ambitious person. And even now, I wouldn't say that I'm an ambitious person, not in the traditional sense of the word. I am ambitious in the sense that I'm much more of a go-getter now than I was when I was before this. Because before this, I was so broken, like my confidence was so broken that I really just felt like a leaf floating on the water. Like, I felt like I had no power over my life, that nothing I do was going to matter. You know, it's basically what you would expect a person to think during severe depression. And during the Rahu thing, again, and I stress this, what changed was not the surface. What changed was my attitude. My attitude was like, I'm gonna go after what I want, like, no matter what, and nobody's gonna tell me what to do. And I have gone through, like, really, when I look back, not to blow my own horn, but I have gone through so many situations where I had massive obstacles stacked up against me, and I still plowed through them. And again, this could be also because of other things happening in my chart. I also have a pretty strong Mars energy and a strong Sun energy. But Rahu is also very strong. It's conjunct a lot of planets. It's, sitting in a strong placement. And I was going through the Rahu Mahadasha. And Rahu is about material ambition. Okay? And I own it. I definitely have some material ambition, let's say. I mean, I wouldn't say material ambition in the sense that I want to be rich and famous. Not like that. But I want to be in control of my life, if that makes sense. And which before I wasn't as tough as I am now, after overcoming a lot of challenges and all this stuff, which, is explainable. Any person overcoming a lot of challenges becomes more independent and more self-reliant, I think. But at the same time, Rahu brought this recurring theme of dealing with very difficult people. Because like I mentioned, it aspects my air houses, okay, the 3rd, the 7th, the 11th, and I had to deal, with narcissistic abuse, harassment at work. It also happens to be conjunct the Lord of my 10th house, a lot of job changes, a lot of being double-crossed by, like I mentioned, by managers, by bosses, all kinds of things. And here's the funny thing. I used to read descriptions about the Rahu Mahadasha, and one of the descriptions that I came across literally said that the native will feel like he cannot trust anyone or she cannot trust anyone, but that other people will also perceive you, the one who has the Rahu Mahadasha, as untrustworthy. Which, again, is hand in hand with the legend, right? Because this Asura deceived and this is also true for I was scapegoated for a lot of things that I didn't do throughout the whole time, both at work and sometimes even in, other relations that were not as formal. All kinds of things, but generally shows ups and downs. It also, if you have seen the video that I talked about, narcissism, it also, I think, rules narcissists and rules narcissistic abuse. And I definitely had to deal with a lot of narcissists throughout the past 10 years or more. That's another facet of it. But ultimately, what I think the positive side of Rahu is precisely teaching you self-reliance. And this is not like an in-depth video about Rahu. I do plan on making a video at some point in the future about Rahu archetypes, the same way that I did about Ketu archetypes. But what I wanted to talk about with the Rahu archetypes is that if you look at the nakshatras that are also naturally ruled by Rahu, these are the ones. Rahu is the energy that is the most self-reliant. This is also why it's connected to atheism, but atheism is incorrect, I think. I've read that, according to Indian astrologers, oftentimes they connect Rahu to atheism, and the nakshatras ruled by Rahu to atheism, or Aquarius, which is the only sign that Rahu co-rules. It's also connected to technology and atheism. But atheism is incorrectly said, because Aquarius is literally the most spiritual sign of the zodiac. It's not Pisces, it's Aquarius, okay? Pisces is the most faith-based, the most empathetic and the most religious, let's say, not even religious is not correct, but the most faith-based sign is Pisces. So Pisces would be the second most spiritual sign, but Aquarius is the most spiritual because it's the 12th from the 12th. Okay, Pisces is the 12th sign, Aquarius is the 12th from the 12th sign. It's kind of like a higher level of Pisces. And Aquarius and spiritual people, unlike religious people, take responsibility for their own lives. I'm sorry, I'm gonna offend some people right now, but that's how I see it. If you are a very religious person, it's like you constantly base your power externally. You constantly pray to a higher power, and you think, God will give me this if I'm a good person, and blah blah blah, or if I follow this religion, then I will get the results that I want. But Aquarius people understand that the power is within. So Rahu energy has this, and again, I kind of keep thinking of Game of Thrones because, and I'm going to mention this more in the Rahu based archetype video that I plan on making, that the character of Daenerys Targaryen, if you remember, if you've seen Game of Thrones, there was that scene where she was talking to Jon Snow and saying that I went through so many things, and what kept me going through this whole time? It was faith in myself, and not in religion, not in any gods. It was faith in myself. And I'm going to mention Daenerys Targaryen and Emilia Clarke because to me, Daenerys Targaryen is the embodiment of the Ardra Nakshatra, and Emilia Clarke happens to have moon, I think, in Ardra Nakshatra, which is one of the nakshatras that Rahu rules. And it has this energy of being very willful and very wild. And that's another thing. With Rahu energy, you don't want to be pinned down. So there is, if you're going through the Rahu Mahadasha, there's definitely going to be an increase in restlessness. It's also probably why Rahu is connected to foreign lands and foreigners and all this stuff. And that's another thing. I traveled a lot, and I also had a lot of tangency with people from foreign cultures, that's also, and it's not because I traveled, it was because of the job opportunities that were coming. But once again, in my chart, Rahu is conjunct the ruler of the 10th house. So you have to look at your chart and where Rahu sits, if it's conjunct a certain house, which houses does it aspect, if it's conjunct the ruler of a certain house, and those are areas that it will impact the most. Okay, and but where I was going at with this thing is that it definitely teaches you self-reliance. So Rahu is about taking responsibility for yourself and your life, at the end of the day. And that's the best thing, I think, that comes out of this Mahadasha, despite the ups and downs, despite all this stuff. And another thing is, of course, that it does make you want to become more spiritual. It makes you want to study things that are more esoteric, like maybe meditation, maybe tarot, maybe astrology, anything that is more kind of gets you in touch with a different side of reality, or let's say a more higher consciousness. It wouldn't be unlikely that people develop this sudden interest, even if they haven't had interest in these things before. And of course, the foreign influence. And let me think, what else? But because it's connected to Aquarius, there's definitely this thing about being independent. So, it's also maybe, of course, depending on where it's placed, it could be that this is a time where you really want to do whatever you want, and you're gonna be you're gonna find it hard to take orders, pretty much. So it could also be maybe a time when you want to branch out. Maybe you want to, no longer want to be employed, or you want to start a business. But again, this depends on the placement, more or less. But this is pretty much it. So I don't know. This is kind of like a half astrology, half story time sort of video. But I wanted to really talk about my experience because, we all learn best through our own experiences, to be honest. The reason why I have so many insights into astrology is because I've gotten really good at correlating my chart and my horoscope to the experiences that I've had in my own life. And I also look at other people, you know, obviously the people, especially the people that I've known best. But also another reason why I wanted to make this video is just because so many people seem to be frightened by the Rahu Mahadasha, which is probably at least partially justified because it is a horrifying time. But there are also positive sides to it. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know, maybe by the end of this Mahadasha, because I still have like about 5 or 6 years left, which is Holy Mother of God, you know, God help me, that kind of thing. I hope I make it to the end. Maybe by the end I will have some extra insights, or, you know, once I start the other Mahadasha. But that's pretty much what I wanted to share. And once again, if you have enjoyed it and if you have any feedback, please comment in the comment section. And once again, thank you for watching the ads. Please continue to do so to support my channel for free. And if you like the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to check out when I will post a new video. And if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you.